The Brothers Wisp. The Brothers Wisp, Brothers Wisp. The Brothers Wisp. The Brothers.
You're now listening to Greg. It's the Brothers Wisp. Let's take
Hey
a
everybody,
ride through
this
space
is
on this
Greg
mother
with the
ship.
Brothers Wisp number 91. I am in the motherland, Texas, and it's finally stopped raining for like 2 days straight. I think it's picking up again on Monday. Today we have with us Dave from where?
From LA, Los Angeles.
Ah, nice. I see you've got a tarp in the back. You must be living in a hobo village now. Congratulations.
There's a leak in this office, and when it rains, on the rare occasion that it does, I just have to make sure it doesn't get on my baller couch. See?
Your
there.
baller couch.
My casting couch.
Yeah, it looks a little worse for wear.
There it is.
All right, Nick, fresh from a trip to LA.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you at, brother?
Illinois.
Someplace
2.5 hours south of Chicago.
Oh, that sounds so fun.
Small town called Butthole, Illinois.
Gotcha. Long line of Dave's ancestors are from there. Thomas, where are you from, dude?
I am from Slovakia, which is somewhere in the middle Europe.
Doesn't
And
matter.
all men wear Speedos.
Is that right?
And Dave likes it that way.
Do you
Fuck
wear?
yeah.
Have you ever worn a Speedo, Thomas? Is that your style?
Is that like for the swimming kind of a thing? Is
Yeah.
that it?
Yeah.
Just hanging
Yeah,
out.
years ago when it was a thing.
You're very stylish because you wear like the little like Puma shoes, and then you always got like the leather jacket. It kind of, I don't know. You're very European. Like
I saw
Well,
pictures of
I
Thomas.
am European, so I mean,
I know it.
I saw pictures of Thomas with his bush hairdo when he had like long bush hair, and he put in what is that thing called? A fro-do, a dude fro. What is it called? When they put it in a man bun? Is that it? Don't give me that face. Don't give me that face. You know what I'm talking
I have
about.
no
You
idea
had
what
long
you're
hair
talking
too.
about. He has lovely hair. I'm just saying, it's thick. It's not going anywhere. He's doing great. All right, so let's get the vegetables out of the way. Today, our sponsor is Pennytone. It's the kind of easy button as far as hosted VoIP solutions go. And his special for the month is if you refer any of your business customers, no matter how big or small, once they sign and they're actually paying money, Dave will mail you a check for their first month's bill. It's as easy as that. It's pretty simple.
Right.
I like that with a lot of vendors because I don't want to deal with the thing they do, so it's easy for me just to toss it over there, and oh, by the way, they compensate me along the way. I love doing that kind of thing.
Yep. And
Not
I
to
appreciate
say-
everybody that's done that thus far.
Yeah,
Really
not-
do appreciate
not
that
to
'cause
say
I
I'm
don't do advertising.
Only motivated by money, but it always helps grease the wheels, right? All right. Also, we have a new patron. It's Mackenzie McCarthy, and if you know what Patreon is, patreon.com/TheBrothersWISP. You go there, you throw some money at us, and we give you access to our private Slack where most of the interesting things happen, all the good questions and comments, great dialogue, discourse that happens there. Makes me smarter, a little bit smarter every day, a little bit less dumb every day, if that is possible. I don't know. I think I learn one thing and then two things fall out the back as soon as it happens. Which is why I've got you guys, right? It's like the hive mind, the collective. I guess eventually we're all going to be artificial intelligence, right? We're all just going to be part of the hive mind. Isn't that what the internet
Assimilated.
is? It's like our first step into the hive mind, the central consciousness. And,
No, I completely disagree. Hive is where everybody agrees and you don't have any choice. Everybody on the internet can't wait to tell their opinions.
Well, I mean, it feels like the internet's a very emotional place, right? So people go there
Sure.
and get fired up and blast about one thing or another, but it's still just this amazing massing of human intelligence that's readily available for virtually anyone. Well, I mean, I can't say anyone. I guess there's still lots of the world that doesn't have direct access to the internet, although a lot of those people still have cell phones. And I'm assuming they have some data. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not up on that stuff. Really. I should be though, right? We deal in internet on a daily basis, right? Some
We
of us
got a
anyway.
couple of guys at the MikroTik Mums from Africa. I remember there was a dude called Avuta. He was from Africa, and he was setting up like these wireless links to give his village like internet. It's pretty cool. So, oh yeah, there's still some pretty underdeveloped countries that need interwebs.
Yeah, for sure. To be part of that hive mind, or I'm sorry, Dave, the collective of information. It still fascinates me on an ongoing basis.
When you say that, I think of the Borg, and the internet couldn't be more different than the Borg. The Borg are perfect beings. Anyway.
So you're saying everybody on the internet's not a perfect being?
As a collective, the Borg is super efficient and perfect in that respect.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, I would associate that also with internet meme culture. Is it not perfect and completely in sync and in harmony?
Some of them are very creative, but it's the individuality of the meme that makes it really good, because we've all seen the same picture with a million different like memes on it, and each one can be incredible. So I think that's just a parable for humanity. God, the internet is so amazing. I saw the other day there's a subreddit for water, like people who like water memes and stuff. And so there was like a picture of the Don from The Godfather, and above it it's like when I find out that soda is just flavoring and syrup added to my precious H2O, and it's a picture of him, and he goes, "Do you see what they've done to my boy? See how they've massacred my boy?" Yeah, it's ridiculous. The internet's just an insane place. I love it. Anyway, I digress. Jump in the Slack. A lot of good information, discourse. Those people, you people, they are amazing resource. Some of the smartest people I know. A couple of them here. Nick and Thomas, probably two of the smartest dudes I've ever known. I feel like Dave and I are Danny DeVito and twins. We're just the whatever's left over from and you're the
from
leftover
them.
Shit.
Yeah.
Remember that?
It is what it is. I'm okay with being Danny DeVito because in 20 years I'll be on Always Sunny, and I love that show. So there you go.
Want to be bad.
Here we go.
Remember that?
No. Let's jump into some of the interesting stuff. Something that really grabbed my attention. This kind of happened right after the last cast, and Andrew Thrift cutely coined the term Flapgate for this. So MikroTik apparently has a flapping issue on the CRS 317 on SFP Plus interfaces with newer firmwares. So looking through the forum post and kind of digging around as much as I could, because I'm about to actually do a big CRS 300 series deployment. So I was like freaking out. Am I about to run into problems? And it looks like people were reporting it between other 300 series devices, but it seemed like the core culprit was almost always the 317 on SFP Plus interfaces. People were saying if they were doing it on 1 gig interfaces, it was fine. They also said if they were using DAC cables, they could still see the flapping problem as well. One of the fixes they said, though, was to, instead of running Router OS, run Switch OS, which I almost... you could hear Thomas groan all the way from Slovakia on that one.
Let's not.
But, all right, hear me out. I've already bought the equipment, and if it's just going to be a core switch and it's not doing anything else except for passing VLANs, I could probably live with that if I absolutely had to. But not everybody's reporting problems, and I've heard some people say that they had 11 or 12 deployed and only one was having problems, right? Or some people were saying they had no problems. Digging through the forum post, I think somebody said something to the effect of, well, I mean, one, MikroTik says that they have been able to reproduce the problem. They see the problem. In the forums, it looks like they go back at least 4 to 6 months, the first reports of it. But I think they said something about multicast traffic going to the CPU was causing the flapping issues. I'm not 100% on that. It does appear to be a software problem, right? If it was hardware and you went to Switch OS, you should still see the flapping, correct? So
I would think so.
That would make sense.
So in my thinking, they realize it's an issue. They said they're committed to repairing it, but right now, just exercise caution on 10 gig interfaces on CRS 317s. And I saw people saying 317 to like one of the 312 26s, I think, or I saw some people saying between the 317 and a CCR. So it seems like kind of anything you're hooking up to this could theoretically have port flapping issues where it just kind of randomly flaps. I saw some people say, well, we reboot and it's okay for an hour and the flapping recommences. I saw people trying all kinds of things, changing out cables, changing out optics, doing all kinds of flim flam. So just exercise caution if you've seen it. Hopefully we'll hear from MikroTik fairly soon about, yes, we've identified the problem and we've got it in this beta and everything's great. Because I'm holding out. I haven't deployed this stuff yet. I think it's like 3 weeks before I deploy it. So I'm really crossing my fingers that there'll be this magical fix in that 3-week period and I won't have to worry about it. I'm still thinking about just braving it and seeing if I have the flapping problems, because so many people were saying that, you know, it didn't affect all of their infrastructure. So I was like, I really want to stick with our router OS as opposed to switch OS. Have any of you guys run into this or heard any more information about it? I want to try and be as complete as I can because I don't want to just crap on this thing. I want to give as much information as I possibly could.
You might as well put it on the bench and cable them up and just let it sit for a while.
Just to see if
it's good to go.
Well, I mean,
yeah.
I don't know.
I had the 317, but we were dealing with that auto detect problem where it would flap with an auto detect when you just had the port set to auto detect. I know MikroTik already fixed that. I don't know if there's any relation to that anymore, but I haven't had a good experience with 317.
You were also having problems with your server interfaces too.
Well, one of them.
Well, as far as we know.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess we stuck a fork in there and that one's done. Let's see. What else? There was a lot of talk about virtualization this last week. I think it was this last week. And so somebody mentioned, I would call them out by name, but I can't remember who it was in the Slack. But they said Veeam has a community edition that you can back up 10 VMs for free. I know Veeam's a very powerful.
What was that?
That's one of my children dying. He probably impaled himself on something. Veeam has it's a very powerful backup product. But I know it was kind of pricey before. I didn't actually realize they had a community edition where you could do anything free. I haven't used it in a million years. So I'm thinking about taking a peek at it again just to see what it can do. No thoughts. Excellent. Let's move on. There was... we'll get to that in a little bit because that's more discussion based. So Tomas didn't like the GUI options for Freeradius, of course. So he went and wrote his own, as Tomas is wont to do. He's also going to make it open source at some point. I guess you're still kind of in a beta mode on that though, right, Tomas?
So it is actually already on GitHub. It's just got zero documentation right now. So the plan is to basically the entirety of the issue was that there is a few GUIs for Freeradius, and then there is entire complex identity management system and login and credential management systems which can use Freeradius as a front end to interact with basically devices that use the Radius standard for AAA. And yeah, the problem was that when I started reading and researching and looking what it would actually take to deploy any of these solutions, then basically I just said, screw it. It will be faster to write my own GUI than to deploy and maintain these archaic solutions. This being either a dollar radius or free IPA or things like that, which either require a super old and archaic environment, or in case of free APA are super complex solutions that are meant for so much more than just managing Freeradius. But I just wanted something simple, easy to use, and fast to deploy that would just allow me to easily and comfortably manage my Freeradius database. Because this is for a project that has about 1,500 routers, actually probably more at this point, right? And so it's just Radius. There is no identity management, there is no credential management. I just want a nice GUI to manage Freeradius. And so yeah, the plan is we've fully deployed it, it's fully functional. It works. It was tested at scale with those 1500 MAASes, in radius nomenclature in it. Everything works nicely. It just needs documentation, and so yeah, it is already on GitHub, and we can post a link, and probably when people get through the podcast, it will already have documentation and everything available for it.
Sweet action. So let's take a step back. What is Radius, and when would you use it?
Thomas just had a heart attack.
No, I was waiting for somebody else to get the shot before I go off again.
We love that. We love that foreign accent, brother. Lay it on us.
Oh, by the way, you know what I just figured out while he was talking? I'm like, where have I heard that accent before that I love so much? And it's actually from Dexter's Lab. You know the cartoon? Dexter's Lab? Totally. DD, what are you doing with my experiments? It's totally Kernak.
Take that however you want, Thomas.
Well, since we didn't have English cartoons on TV when I was a kid, then I have no idea what you are talking about.
Oh, dude, I'm gonna send this to you. I'm gonna Slack this to you. You're gonna love it. You're gonna love it.
All right, so tell us about Radius, Thomas, and when and why you would use it.
So yeah, Radius is basically a standard, and it is actually standard because it is RFC based for AAA, which is authentication, authorization, and accounting of logins into devices. Pretty much any devices that support the standard. You can even do Linux logins and authentication through Radius if you wanted to. There's libraries. Basically, it's just a standard for AAA, authentication, authorization, and accounting.
Gotcha.
And so what you usually use this for in networking is to have basically a single sign-on for your network, right? So all your networking equipment points to your Radius servers. Please never have one, have two, redundancy. So all your networking equipment points to your Radius servers, and then anytime somebody tries to log in to the router or the switch, it authenticates and authorizes of Radius. So authentication simply means it checks if the credentials are correct, and authorization means that it actually checks what access a user should have to that particular device. Should it be a full administrator or a read-only account, etc. And then the last A in the AAA, the accounting, means that all of your devices across the entire network account their logins, which means simply something like audit. So any login that happens, it would be written into a Radius database. Who logged in, which router they logged in, when they logged out, and all of this. Also, you can use this for your customers for PPPoE if you don't have like a full billing solution or something similar. You can use it to AAA your management VPNs. Basically, any login anywhere you have, Radius can make it into a single sign-on system. So, if you get a new employee, you just put in his credentials into Radius, and suddenly he has access across the network. And if an employee leaves, you take the credentials out of Radius, and magically, he doesn't have access anywhere in the network anymore.
Gotcha. So instead of going to 1,500 routers and putting a username and password, or having to blanket update all that stuff, you just have one central repository. You go there, you add a new user, you update passwords, and Bob's your uncle, right?
Oh, there is always advantages and disadvantages to every approach, and so with Radius, if Radius is offline, you don't have access to your equipment. So at the end of the day, you still want to have some local credentials on your devices, which you need to update and maintain and etc. But yes, those should be just emergency management access credentials, when Radius doesn't work for some reason, or when the device is cut off from the network or something similar. But there is multiple approaches to this, right? But Radius is just one of the possible AAA implementations. Some vendors, for example, MikroTik does not, but a lot of vendors support AAA directly against LDAP, right? Which is Active Directory. The Microsoft Active Directory supports the LDAP protocol as well, although AD, Active Directory, is not LDAP. There is a difference. It's LDAP compatible. It's not LDAP by itself. It uses and supports the LDAP protocol. So there is LDAP, there is Radius, there is TechAxe, there is many, or more than one different solutions to this. Radius is just one which I like to use, and we use it across all of our networks.
So the GUI you built for Freeradius, is that really targeted at maintaining Freeradius for authentication of like routers, as opposed to terminating clients on PPPoE sessions for like if you're a WISP and you've got a bunch of clients? Is it more targeted just the logins for servers and routers versus kind of handling customers?
So,
is that
the GUI really is a front end, a graphical front end to the Radius database. It's not a billing solution, it's not a identity management solution, it's not anything complex. So you can do absolutely anything with it, which you can do with Radius, because it's just a really comfortable and easy to use front end to the database itself. So it doesn't configure Radius, it doesn't touch Radius configuration files, most of the time, once you configure Radius, which is quite a big job, Freeradius is not an easy and comfortable piece of software. It's one of those which I like to... Well, they do have decent documentation, but it's still a super messy, complicated piece of open source software that you need to spend a week, reading and studying and learning and understanding and configuring, so it works properly, because of course if you are a kind of a person that just installs it and uses it as a default, it will do something, right? The problem is you don't know what that something is and how it behaves. So our GUI, or we call it Redman, Radius Manager, it doesn't touch Radius by itself in any way. It's just a comfortable way to maintain the database, which is what you do or what you spend most of your time on. So I was mentioning, once you actually configure Freeradius, usually you don't touch it, right? It does its job. What you do touch is the database, the database of users and passwords and the authorization attributes and all of that. And so since that's what you spend most of your time doing and managing, that's what we wrote a really nice and easy tool for.
rock and roll, brother? All right, you're gonna have to send me the link so I can put it in the thing. All right. Hey, Thomas, do you guys do a lot of DSL over there in Slovakia?
Still quite a bit. It's been slowly dying over the years, but yeah, DSL is still fairly common here. Even today, much more so like 5 years ago, it was probably the main way people were connected to the internet.
Gotcha. I know it's really dying off here. Do you guys see it a lot out in LA, Dave?
I don't know anyone. Wait, I know one person, but they're like way out in the hills. Yeah, I really... LA is so densely packed, it would be advantageous for any ISP to want to do fiber. I mean, the two kings over here that you can't mess with are Spectrum and now it's called Frontier, but it's Fios. Those are really the only two out here. DSL, I think AT&T offers it in like really remote areas outside of LA. That's about it.
How about you, Nick?
There's DSL for miles all around me.
Okay. Well, you're a little bit more rural, though, right?
Yes.
That's such a hard word for me to say, by the way. Rural.
It's pretty terrible. I mean, they don't care about the infrastructure, and there's a lot of crops and stuff around me. So every time that they plow the fields, they smash into the DSL boxes. So every time I drive down the road, I see the pedestals, and there's like some kind of plastic wrap or something wrapped around all the copper because they know it's going to get hit. They don't know when they're going to send the team out. And also lots of the lines are corroded. So they're always coming out, they're disconnecting a different customer to borrow their copper to connect a different customer. And it's ridiculous.
Gotcha.
And they've even told some of the customers from the WISP I used to work at that everything's going wireless later, so there isn't any incentive for them to fix that copper infrastructure. They're just going to keep stealing lines from people and keep rotating service outages.
That's funny. After, I think I was reading that after Hurricane Sandy, up in New York, kind of up in the Northeast there, that a lot of copper infrastructure was just totally obliterated, and the incumbents basically said, we're not going to replace it. It's too costly, and it's just, it's dying. It's dying on the vine. This all comes up because on Facebook I saw somebody link to Versa Technology VDSL2 kind of media converter. I don't know. It's the back end. It's got like a 4-port switch with gig ports, and then it's really small. It's very compact. And then on the front, it's got a VDSL 2 port that you can just plug into a POTS line or anything else. I think I heard somebody say you could run it over barbed wire if you wanted to. But
I remember reading that. Yeah.
Yeah, they're talking about 190 megs up to 110 megs the other direction. Up to 9,000 feet. I think at 9,000 feet though, you're not getting full speed, but still. Have you guys used any of these little dudes? I saw several people commenting on how useful they were. I was trying to think of some scenarios where it would be like a cool
I'm
little...
trying to think about how somebody would know you can run this on barbed wire. So first you would have to have barbed wire. I don't know why anybody's house would have barbed wire. And where the hell do you even buy barbed wire from? I don't know. I live in the city.
They probably saw something metal and they thought they could send some bits over it.
Go for it. Tractor Supply, dude. That's where we get all that kind of stuff around here.
Oh my god.
Go to TSC. But yeah,
so I can give you a really good use case, and actually we've used this ourselves multiple times. So when you have really, well, not really, but older buildings, especially hotels or hospitality kind of places, and they are remodeling or renewing, oftentimes they won't want to pull new internet. And what we have been doing, every single room has a phone line, which these days nobody uses anymore. Yeah. So we've actually been deploying these lamps inside those hotels and hospitality places and stuff like that. And basically you just put a little their, own private DSLAM in the basement or in a rec room that they have. And, you just do DSL to each room and plop in a DSL modem/router in each room, and then you have high-speed internet to basically every room or anywhere you need, without having to spend money pulling new infrastructure, which if they don't want to do, then this can actually come up quite cheaper.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like DSLAM would be really good in kind of an MDU or an apartment environment, like a high-density living, or in a kind of a hotel. And a DSLAM is what? That's a I don't remember what the acronym stands for.
Digital subscriber line access multiplier.
There you go.
Multiplexer.
So it's really it's the termination point for all the DSL connections. Each one comes on its own little copper lines, and then you put a modem out on the other end, and Bob's your uncle. You're done. You're rocking and rolling. But I was thinking this would actually probably be a nice little kit because it's more or less a media converter. You just put one on one end and one on the other end, and it takes care of everything for you. For like, you've got older, like Thomas was saying, older buildings, but say there's a remote building. A lot of times they'll have copper phone lines in between the two, and you could light it up. I guess it would be an alternative to doing a radio shot in a weird environment or something like that.
Not just that. Another use case, which is quite common for us, for example, is when you are pulling IP cameras, right? And you don't have a cable and you don't want to do Wi-Fi because obviously it's IP security. Yeah, it's security. Doing Wi-Fi, bad idea. And oftentimes you will have some form of copper connection across the poles or across the campus or the object that you are trying to secure. And without having to pull new cables everywhere, you just stuck those in, and there you go.
Yeah, and it's ample bandwidth for that kind of application.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
It's in Kernak's laboratory. It's a bunch of DSLAMs. Radius servers.
I've never used it, but doesn't like VDOT-fast, like those types of technologies, utilize those lines too?
The newer
or is
stuff,
that just coax?
Yeah, because the VFast stuff, isn't that supposed to be like gigabit?
Yeah, because they're
very far. We were going to try to use it up at Mount Wilson, but the range is not far. I think it's like 1,600 feet or something.
Yeah, we were talking about like for MDUs for stuff, not so much for...
Not for distance. Yeah.
Because they're like taking an old technology and they're coming out with new ways to like maximize the throughput you can get on it, because it's probably really expensive to re-outfit a whole building, whereas long-range stuff, you're only really paying for the labor to get conduit put down, because fiber is like so cheap now, especially in bulk. But I could definitely see circumventing all the extra work and just utilizing the existing copper.
Yeah, not having to rip and replace can save you all.
Right.
And it seems like just as soon as, we've exhausted all of the bandwidth or usability of some copper medium, they come up with a new way of, a new technique, a new modulation, something that squeezes some more life out of it. Well,
Barbed wire.
Well, I was going to say that, and like compression keeps getting better and things like that too, right? So it requires less and we're getting better. I don't know. The two make me very happy, both of those two. So somebody added MikroTik Layer 2 QoS. Normally works on Layer 3 only, but can be done for Layer 2. Who added that, and what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that was me. We were dealing with Mike 2 days ago with setting this up. So Mike Hammett, of course, had a requirement or had a topology environment where he needed to do some simple prioritization, right? He had one outbound port and two inbound ports, like one WAN and two LANs, and he just wanted to prioritize, Ether 2 from Ether 3. So whatever came in on Ether 2 had priority over traffic on Ether 3, and that was it. And so he set up the QoS, or the MikroTik Qs, and it did not work. And so it turns out he was running a bridge, right? So all of the 3 ports were in a bridge. So normally MikroTik QoS only works on layer 3. So to make it work on a bridge or layer 2 scenario, there is actually 2 things you have to do. So first of all, you have to enable use IP firewall for the bridge, which if you check out the packet flow diagram, you will see that it basically uses a bunch of facilities or layer 3 facilities even for L2 traffic, and those facilities will allow you to do QoS even on bridged or L2 connections. And the second thing that it requires is normally MikroTik for performance reasons, if you have nothing in IP firewall, and I don't mean the firewall filter, I mean the firewall facility, which includes, Mangle, NET, firewall. If you have no rules in the firewall facility, connection tracking will be off. And surprise, queuing requires connection tracking. So you actually have to tell MikroTik or force MikroTik to do connection tracking, which you can quite easily do if you go to IP firewall and then connection tracking and then settings. Yeah. There is basically a drop-down menu that says connection tracking and it says auto. So by default it's in automatic mode, and in the automatic mode it's not enabled when there is no firewall functionality being utilized. So you have to force it into enabled. So those are the 2 things that you need to do to make QoS work on layer 2. Use IP firewall for the bridge and enable connection or force enabling connection tracking.
Aren't you going to take a performance hit when you tell the bridge to use the firewall?
Oh, you will, definitely.
Yeah.
How bad would you say?
Depends on the traffic, no?
Yeah, it depends, but basically it's like if you were routing the traffic, right, instead of bridging it. That's all it does. It just redirects the traffic on the packet flow diagram through normal routing facilities. So suddenly your available throughput goes from, what you would have if you look at the MikroTik website for the traffic tests for your equipment. You are doing L2, but you need to look at the L3 throughputs because we are basically utilizing L3 facilities on the traffic.
Gotcha. So maybe if you're using something with a lower speeded processor or kind of a single small processor, like on a CRS 112 or something, right? Exercise caution on that?
Yeah, just don't.
You're definitely not going to get anywhere near wire speed.
Yeah.
No, nowhere near.
Gotcha.
It'd be bad.
So in Mike's particular use case, he only had, I think he said he only had 5 megabits of total available bandwidth on the port. So he just needed to prioritize across 5 megabits, which really anything will do, right? But yeah, if you are trying to do a wire speed gig, not a good idea.
All right, let's get some of the fast stuff out of here. Alisdair was talking about using BFD, that's bidirectional forwarding detection. He was trying to lower his convergence time, right? And so what does BFD do between 2 separate devices? It sends these little communications, and it can talk to other protocols like OSPF or BGP. And if they fail, like these BFD messages, it can kind of tear down your BGP session faster, right, to help speed up convergence and things like that. Am I saying that right, Thomas? I know you're cringing inside.
No. That's exactly what it does.
All right, so it's I mean it's is it standards based? Because I know a lot of people use it. I mean, it is a standard, right?
Yes.
All right, I've never tried to do it between like a MikroTik and a Cisco. I assume it maybe works. I haven't tried it. Probably works.
I haven't tried either.
All right, well there you go. I've only ever done it like Cisco to Cisco or MikroTik to MikroTik. Let's see. Dan fell victim to the MikroTik LTE SIM card. It's the same thing that happens with your USB port. You plug it in wrong and then you try and turn it around and it won't go in that way, and you turn it back around the way you originally had it and it finally goes in. He had his SIM card in there, and I say let's not laugh at him because maybe I've done the exact same thing with that SIM card.
Which Dan is this?
I don't know, one of the Dans. Why are you trying to shame Dan? Just let it be.
I'm not trying to shame him. I think he deserves an award.
Oh boy.
Oh, Lord have mercy. All right. So another thing we've been talking about a lot going on with virtualization was we were talking about servers. And I was just curious, how many of you guys actually buy brand new servers versus gray market? I pretty much always buy my stuff. And when I say gray market, I usually just go to eBay. I think there's the last couple of times I've ordered, it's from a guy called Save My Server, I think, something like that.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
On eBay, and I've had really good success. I was just curious, do you guys actually
purchased
buy
from
brand
Dell.
new stuff?
Those
Before.
boxes are right there. See them boxes? That's Save My Server.
Save My Server.
Yeah, so
I
I
mean-
bought a few.
Really, the only there are some people, like companies I've worked with, that just prefer to buy through Dell because they get Dell support in the warranty.
Oh, yeah.
And they can lease the server through them. But I usually always try to get people to go to like ServerMonkey or Save My Server, because most of them do. A lot of them, I think they do like 3-year warranties
3-year.
on everything you buy from them. So
Comes
there's no
with it,
reason
yeah.
to really buy completely brand new, because there's lots of data centers that upgrade hardware, and like Save My Server, they'll get like thousands of Dell R610s. They clean them all out. They reseat RAM, build them to spec. You can pick exactly what you need, and they cover it with a warranty. So, but there are a couple people that want to go through Dell, and if they buy in bulk, they get extra perks and discounts on stuff if you're a partner. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what would justify spending that much on a server.
I know 90% of the people inside of our data center or better buy all of their equipment brand new, right? From whatever manufacturer it happens to be. I was just curious, like on kind of the smaller end or the WISP or things like that. I know, Thomas, you just bought a bunch of weird little things. You're making.
Atomic
Well, those
Pies.
Raspberry Pis, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
So with us, first with the servers, with us in Slovakia, it's a bit different. So luckily, like the gray market for servers and networking equipment has gotten so much better in the last 3 or 4 years. But before that,
Define
didn't really
better
exist.
in Slovak.
So before that, it didn't really exist. Now
Oh.
it exists. That's better, right?
A lot better.
One is better than zero. Get it?
Yeah, exactly. So over the years, I've had to do some pretty crazy things, including building my completely own custom servers from Supermicro. You just order all of the parts and you build your own cluster. And I've actually built, this was maybe 7 years ago or something like that. We built an entire cluster out of basically Supermicro parts. The customer didn't have money for HP or original brand servers, so they built everything up, and the cluster actually still works up to this day and is running great. We've also bought a lot of original servers because there was no other choice, but yeah, luckily the gray market has come to Europe as well at
I
this
can't
point.
believe in a place like Slovakia, in the middle of Europe, where like everything is a deal behind a door, that you didn't have any of that going on. I don't know. My wife is from Hungary, but she was born in Romania. Whatever, there's a whole big thing about how they changed borders. But everything in Romania is like used secondhand, even if it's labeled as new. It's secondhand. So a little shocking to know that you didn't have that there.
Yeah,
Interesting.
it's actually it's a little bit like the cultures are very different in different places in Europe, right? Slovakia and Czech being Central Europe countries, it's actually funny because people usually consider Slovakia Eastern Europe, which it really is not. The actual geographical center of Europe is in Slovakia. But then you have countries like Romania and all the other basically Southern Europe countries, you could say, right? It's very different cultures and very different economical and very different historical things happening all around the place. So quite different.
This is Kernax. This is the angriest you'll ever see Kernak.
Angry.
Yep,
This
is
isn't.
his
This
version
isn't.
of being angry.
No, I've seen him. I've seen him
We are
spicy
very
before. This
different
isn't
cultures.
angry Kernak. He doesn't care.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, I don't really care at all. But yeah, just wait till I get into a good ranting mode. You will get some
Thomas's
some
patented
energy out of
rants.
me there. Yeah.
When are you gonna move over? When are you gonna move to America? You're like a celebrity here.
Nah,
Move over to America. Come on, man. Come to LA.
too much.
Grow
stuff.
that hair out again.
Man, the hair was awesome. I really miss it.
He's coming to Texas.
Grow it out. Grow it out.
The
Come
hair
to
was
LA. We'll go to Venice.
All right. So tell us about your crazy pie cluster or whatever.
Oh yeah, this is a fun one. So it's a work in progress right now. But yeah, I bought 15 atomic pies. By the way, there is a super interesting story behind those boards, the atomic pies, which I don't know if you want to get into that now, but there is a super interesting story behind those boards. And I think there will be maybe one more sale of them, and then they will never be available again. So we bought 15, and we probably will be purchasing a bunch more when they receive the next batch. Basically, the company that sells them, just to give you a short version, it's super interesting, but the short version is DLI, the company that sells the atomic pie. They didn't manufacture them, they didn't design them, they purchased them after a robotic company went bankrupt. And for some reason, the robotic company, they were designing like a companion robot, Jibo kind of a thing, if you've ever heard of Jibo, which is another company that went under about a year ago. Basically in like 2015 and 16 and 14, there was like a boom of these robotic companions, and everybody, was making a startup to make robotic companions, and then they all went down. Anyway, for some reason, this company bought about 20,000 boards. There is a theory that they didn't even, not even they manufactured them, because there is no reason for a company that's making a robot or a robotic companion, and they are making prototypes. There is no reason for them to order 20,000 boards. They don't know if they will manufacture and sell 20,000 robots. So there is some speculation that the board was originally designed for automotive and vehicular purposes. Then that didn't pan out, so the robotic company bought 20,000 boards from some other company going down, and then the robotic company went under, and the DLI purchased the 20,000 boards, basically never used, in like huge, freights of junk. And they kickstarted it on Kickstarter just to get the funds to actually purchase those boards, and now they are selling them. Which there is nothing wrong with any of this, right? It's much better than those boards, ending on a trash dump in China somewhere. It's much better, and they are really nice boards. Because if you look at the spec sheet of those boards, the manufacturing price of that board is probably around $80. They are selling them for $35. That's the sales price.
Oh, wow.
Right? So if the manufacturing price and the component price, the BOM, the bill of materials, is $80, and this doesn't even include the costs of designing all of that and everything that goes into making a single board computer, they are selling them for $35. It's an amazing deal. I'm happy they are doing it, but this is why I'm saying that after the stock of those 20,000 atomic pies is sold out, those will not be available ever again. This is because DLI is not manufacturing them, they are just reselling old stock. So that's why we purchased 15, and we will be buying more. It's rumored basically because these were public auctions where they sold out the inventory from the robotics company, and you can actually find the links for the crates of the boards that were sold on the auction site. And there were 3 crates, each with about 5,000 to 7,000 boards. So DLI so far has sold 2 rounds of Atomic Pi, the original stock, which was about 5,000, and now the second sale was about 6,000. So if you do the math, there is about 8,000 boards remaining, the Atomic Pi boards, in the third stock that was sold on the original auction, which means that when it goes on sale for the third time, it will be the final time, and when those 8,000 boards sell, then that's it. And the short version turned into the long version.
So what's so good about these things, and what are you doing with them?
All right, so basically it's a single board computer that can do a lot of things. There is a lot of stuff in it. It has a crazy, basically a motion sensor with gyroscope, magnetic field detector, all 6 degrees of motion detection and stuff like that. It has audio, it has GPIO, it has IC2, it's like a full-on, Raspberry Pi on steroids. It really is. But for $35, so it has an Intel processor. It's an Atom Intel processor, and 2 gigs of RAM and 16 gigs of MMC storage. And it's $35. So it's 4 cores at 1.6 to 1.9 gigahertz with turbo boost, but it has a super beefy cooler. So the CPU actually is constantly at 1.9 gigs. So it's 4 cores at 1.9 gig, 2 gigs of RAM. And so we purchased 15, and I will be making a MAAS cluster out of it. So a MAAS cluster, it's called Metal as a Service. It's an open source project which basically gives you bare metal server provisioning like a cloud server provisioning. So it's a super nice graphical interface. You click, I want the server with Ubuntu 18, and I want this one out of the available hardware stock, and you click provision, and then there is a spinning loading bar, and suddenly you have SSH to a physical metal server. But the point is you can choose anything you want, like in a cloud environment, and it's a super cool technology stack. It uses PXE, the boot over Ethernet to boot the image and deploy the image to the local server. It power controls everything, so when you request a metal server, it actually powers it on, boots it over PXE, deploys, installs Linux, and gives you SSH. When you basically tell it, I no longer want this server, it will actually clean it, wipe it, and power it off. It's called MAAS, Metal as a Service, and basically we will be using it. So, to make another story out of this, about 4 months ago, we migrated all of our stuff for Unimus, or for Netcore, which is the company behind Unimus, right? Our software company. We have a bunch of servers. We have about 35 servers at this point for development, for testing, for everything that the software company needs, right? And we migrated all of that into Scaleway, which is basically just a cloud provider. And people will say, why not Amazon? Why not AWS? Because it's super freaking expensive. So if all of our infrastructure was in AWS, we would be, for everything that we need, we would be paying about $2,000 a month, which is ridiculous, and I will not do that. So we migrated into Scaleway, where it cost us about $300 a month. And the problem is you get what you pay for. And so there is all kinds of issues, nothing really deal-breaking, but there is 2 issues. There is packet loss on Scaleway. You can clearly see, because my obsession to monitor everything, I actually monitor everything, so you can clearly see during peaks, latency goes up, and you get about 8 to 10% packet loss during daily peaks, which is horrible, of course. VMs are randomly freezing and need reboot. Their support is the worst I have ever seen. It's horrible. So on one server, we spun up a VM, right? And it didn't have IPv6 connectivity. I checked everything up, like IPv4 works, IPv6 doesn't. I opened the ticket. I kid you not, the ticket has been opened for 40 days now. They cannot fix lack of IPv6 connectivity on a server for 40 freaking days. They admitted it's their own fault. And I know it's their fault because I can see it's an L3 loop. You do a trace route and you see a layer 3 loop, so I know it's their fault, right? And they cannot fix it. And it's like, freaking scaleway. So, taking into account that AVS would cost us about $2,000 a month, Scaleway is costing us $300 a month. So if I purchase 15 atomic pies, I get 15, 4-core 2 gig RAM servers, which is completely enough for our usage. Basically, we use it for build server, for automated testing. So anytime somebody commits commits some code into our Git repository, there is, all the tests get automatically run. There is code compliance and code review, and we have, bug tracker, internal wikis, all kinds of internal systems. So we will be moving them, our internal systems, we will be moving to this new Atomic Pi cluster because it's completely sufficient for the job. And so at the cost of basically for 15 pies, it was about $700 with shipping and everything else. It will completely pay itself back in 4 months. So that's the story.
Booyah. That's pretty cool.
I can only imagine what the first date with your girlfriend was like. Like what?
It's not like she's gonna bring up like engineering, technical, networking stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
I would love to know what they spoke about on their first date. Anyway, he's silent now because he's probably was talking about technical stuff.
No, I was thinking actually. Our first date was, I think, after we went to play squash sport, and we went to like a bar kind of a thing after. So I can't remember what we talked about though.
You drank too much.
Wasn't much talking. That's right up Greg's alley. Squash. That's closely related to pickleball.
No, that's not even close. That's closer to racquetball.
Not even close. Oh, that's right. Yeah, you hit hard ball, you get whaled on it. Right? That thing hits you, you die.
Yeah, pickleball's the stuff. It's not even close.
I'm gonna have to buy some of these.
All right.
Yeah, they're on eBay.
So looking
Well,
at
the eBay, I wouldn't trust eBay with that. You can't buy them in bulk on eBay, and it's probably someone waiting to buy these, mark them up, and sell them on eBay.
Well,
But if you think about, like, we're talking about Radius and stuff, that uses, like, no resources.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, DNS stuff, like, you could do so much stuff with these.
For us, they will be hosting our primary and secondary DHCP server because we have a single redundant DHCP server, which we use relays everywhere from. So all our infrastructure is relayed from a central pair of Radius of DHCP servers. Yeah, they will be running our DNS. They will be running our LDAP, Open LDAP. They will be running our build servers. They will be running our Git repositories, even our backup servers, because all of our servers back up to a pair of backup servers. And those backup servers, they don't need CPU or RAM, right? It's just storage. So, like, these will be pretty much all of our internal systems will now be running on a cluster of 15 of these.
There you go. 2 months from now,
Connect
Thomas is going to have atomicscale.com. He's going to have his own version. Scaleway out there.
So my question is this kind of like a test bed to kind of figure out metal as a service and then eventually migrate to... Okay.
Exactly. So I made it into a bigger project. So how we are doing it, we are basically 3D printing a custom bracket for all of these, and we will have 3 modules of 5 pies, and each module will have redundant power supplies. We'll have complete monitoring with my favorite tiny controllers, which I've mentioned a couple of times on the podcast before. So it will be like 3 modules, each with basically 20 cores and 10 gigs of RAM and everything. And yeah, exactly. It's a testbed for Metal as a Service. If Metal as a Service works well with these, then we will actually purchase some more beefier servers to migrate even our beefier stuff locally. So it's kind of a funny shift because, first of all, you had everything on-premise and you were migrating out into the cloud, and we have done that, and now we are migrating out of the cloud but locally now because financially it makes sense. And, with 15 boards, you have such high redundancy with all of these that redundancy is not a problem anymore because you have 15 of them. And
Do they have 2 power inputs on these things?
No, but they are powered off a 5-volt rail. So you can just, plug in 2 5-watt power supplies in parallel, and there you go, redundant power.
Kernex Lab.
Well, so if you're not too busy, do you mind documenting some of this stuff and showing?
Yes.
That'd be awesome. Because as soon as you posted this, I was like, oh, I wonder what it's going to be.
Yeah, we are documenting all of this. We are making pictures of our design process for the modules, for the mounts. We will be making part lists of how we did everything. It will become a blog post series, maybe even a YouTube video series, but I don't think I will have time, so I will just write the blogs, and it will become a blog series on how to build basically a high node count MAAS cluster, which is still professional and redundant and modular and all of that.
Are you going to put this on the Unimas blog?
Yeah, definitely.
Very clever.
Awesome.
So, if you have not subscribed to the Unimas blog, there will be a ton of cool stuff coming to the Unimas blog soon.
Sounds like the Brothers Wisp is getting some competition.
All right, you guys ready for a patented rant? I think I feel like it's time for Thomas to pop off. All right, so Hyper-V, Proxmox, ESXi, or Zen? What's your favorite virtualization platform? All right, I'll go first. I started with ESXi. You guys are so quiet. I started with ESXi. Well, you know what it was? It was VMware Workstation. Is that what they used to call it? Where you could just load it on your laptop, and then they kind of made a light version of VMware Player. So that's where I learned, and then switching over to ESXi, which is the VMware kind of free version that you can load on a server that doesn't have a lot of the bells and whistles and stuff. And then now all of you guys have been using Proxmox for so long that I'm finally jumping on that bandwagon and starting to use it. I like it a lot. It is. I think Thomas said that ESXi is much easier, and it definitely, of all the virtualization platforms, it feels the most Fisher Price. Big easy buttons to get started with. Not to say it's not powerful, because it absolutely is. It's just you have to license every additional feature. It doesn't come with all 4 tires. You've got to license each tire individually. But once you get past that, it's a really great, solid platform. It's very Googleable. So any problems you hit, usually you can find an answer in Google, which is really nice. But Proxmox is an open source virtualization system, and it seems to have all those things you have to license in ESXi come into Proxmox pretty much for free. There's some things that it doesn't do, obviously, but I really like it, and it's free. You can get support for it. I think you do support. It's like annual support, right? By the number of physical CPUs sockets.
Yeah, it's per socket.
There you go. And it's fairly reasonable for what you're getting, especially compared to the rest of the stuff. It's fairly reasonable. So I've really enjoyed it. I've run it on several different things now. And the only thing I haven't done is kind of the clustering piece, which I need to start testing that stuff out. But what do you guys like, and why do you like it?
Nick set up my Proxmox, and it's been pretty rock solid since. We tried getting Ceph going, but
your interfaces were messed up.
Yeah, one of the interfaces was screwed up, and we daisy chained them, so we had some Ceph issues. I know that Justin Miller is an ESXi guy, and he's going over to Proxmox. He would be a good guy to ask about that. And obviously, Alex Hart is all about Proxmox, so he'd be another great guy to chime in about it.
I know most of the people in our data center infrastructure are VMware, right? Their healthcare, their petroleum, their lawyers, their insurance, all those guys buy VMware, it seems. So
yeah. It's like, I personally don't like Hyper-V. I'm not a huge fan of Microsoft stuff, but I have used ESXi and I've used Proxmox. there's quite a few people that I've set up servers for that don't need like super high availability or clustering. And one of the things that I liked about ESXi is that the whole operating system runs in RAM. So if you get like an R610 or an R710 or whatever they need for storage capacity, it's kind of nice that you can just boot ESXi off some little SD cards. And Dell has like those little redundant SD modules. So it boots real quick off of those, or USB. It goes right into RAM. So all of your actual physical hard drives can be used for the storage. But like I said, it's been way out of like my budget to even play with or test ESXi. I thought about doing they have like an annual thing that you can sign up for, and you get access to some of the licensed stuff and a test of vCenter. But it looks like for large scale stuff and large orchestration and migration, they do a lot of stuff with the easy button when you pay for the licensing. So I'm sure it's worth it at super huge scale, but I just like that with Proxmox, I could buy some gray market servers, hook 3 of them up, and get a pretty complex cluster set up without having to nickel and dime for every piece of feature that I need. So, but I haven't done anything at scale, which is why I was quiet first, because I listened to Tomas talk about this stuff, because he's definitely done a lot more with this stuff than I've ever done.
All right, Tomas, kick off the rant.
So, not really a rant, because there is nothing really to rant about. So, yeah, I've ran multiple sizable clusters before. I've ran a sizable Hyper-V cluster, which has left me with a really bad taste in my mouth for Hyper-V. And I've ran multiple sizable vSphere, or VMware, ESXi, however you want to call it. So technically, ESXi is the hypervisor, vSphere is the entire solution, and VMware is the company that makes it, right? So I have not yet ran a Proxmox cluster. I have played with Proxmox on individual, VM hosts, but that's very different than running a full-scale production cluster. So, my personal opinions. So, I ran a sizable Hyper-V cluster for remote FX. So, back in the day, about, I think, 8 years ago or so, when thin clients were all the rage and desktop hosting was all the rage, I ran a sizable desktop hosting cluster using remote FX for a company. And this had to run Hyper-V because remote FX is a Microsoft proprietary technology. And by the way, it was super cool technology and still is even today. So for those that don't know, remote FX is basically a way for a pool of virtual machines to share a single graphics card placed in the server, like a physical hardware graphics card. And so what you can actually do is you can game inside of your virtual machine desktops of a single powerful graphics card in a server, just as a stupid example, right? But the point is that you get full hardware acceleration across, a virtualized shared graphics card. The technology is called Remote FX, and when you use it combined with RDP version 7 or newer, which these days is ancient, but back in the day, RDP version 7 was the new hot stuff. You could actually, over RDP, watch full, YouTube 1080p videos at 60 FPS, or use CAT, or use 3D design software over RDP on remote virtualized servers, the era of thin clients. And so in that era, I ran a sizable Hyper-V cluster that basically hosted a bunch of virtual desktops, and oh man, was it painful. So ever since that day, I think, so from our discussion in Slack, supposedly things have changed a bit and it's now better, but as time goes, every software solution will get better. Mm-hmm. So VMware has gotten better, and I am sure Proxmox has gotten better as well. So for VMware, for ESXi, what I can say is, it's super easy and super simple, and vSAN is, oh my god, is amazing. It costs insane money. It's ridiculously expensive. vSAN in itself will cost you as much as licensing everything else from VMware. But once you have it, vSAN is amazing. It, setting up Ceph Well, with vSAN, you literally click a button and you have fully distributed, redundant object storage across the entire cluster. And you simply set how many copies of the VM files you want to keep, and it does everything in as magic in software, right? It's amazing.
So let me take a stab at an idiot's version of vSAN. It's like you take a bunch of hosts, like the host being the physical hardware, the physical server, and the cluster, and you just load those jokers up with hard drives, and then when you enable vSAN, it basically, instead of having a dedicated SAN sitting over here by itself doing all the aggregated storage for all those hosts, all the hosts suddenly become the SAN, right? All their storage gets aggregated together.
Yeah, storage pool, storage cluster, basically.
Yeah.
And it has tiering, so you can define tiers. It has caching and acceleration, so you can have, like, I don't know, 5 spindle drives and a single SSD, and the SSD will be the cache for all of those spindles. And you can do tiering, so you will have a SSD-only tier and a spindle tier accelerated by SSDs. You can define policies, so you can define that this group of VMs needs to be at this tier and another group of VMs needs to be at that tier. And you can define policies for supercritical VMs. I want to have, triplicate, distribution of the file system. So each file system block will be at least in 3 physical locations somewhere in the cluster, right? It's much more complex than that because there are algorithms and you have to keep performance good, etc. But it's like amazing. All of this is in a GUI, and you just click a couple of buttons and it's magic. It works, right? And suddenly your VM is backed by a storage that's distributed across 3 physical hosts, and it's running on a different host, right? So still vMotion works. You can live migrate the VM around. You can live migrate the storage around. So if you put a server into a maintenance mode, it will automatically migrate all of the storage blocks that were on that server for those VMs, and it will make sure that they are still in compliance with the storage policy. And it's amazing. It's magical. Nobody else has anything like that at the moment. vSAN is amazing, but it costs crazy money. And there is a second, even bigger but. They have a super strict hardware compatibility list, going down to the version of the BIOS of the storage controller. So they have certified hardware for vSAN. So only certain disks are certified. Only certain SSDs are certified. If you stick in your Samsung SSD, it will not work. It literally will reject the SSD into vSAN. Only certain storage controllers, are supported on only certain BIOS versions, blah, 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 blah. So dealing with the HCL, the hardware compatibility list for vSAN, has been a major pain. So there is a downside to that as well, but I understand why VMware does it that way. If they want to, if the magic just works, they have to validate and certify the magic to work as the magic as it does, and for that you have to be certain of the physical, of the hardware you are running it on. So yeah, VMware is amazing, but it is expensive, and you have to have compliant hardware. Proxmox is completely free, and at the downside that you have to learn everything. Ceph is a freaking complicated thing. And you can see Nick laughing and bobbing his head. Ceph is not easy. So
it's incredible.
It's a click of a button, right? With Proxmox, it's free, but you have to understand all the underlying technologies, right? You have to understand Linux. And so if you use the GUI, you have to understand how the Proxmox GUI changes the Linux configuration files on the backend and what all of that means. And, because at some points, you are better off doing things in the Linux command line than doing them in the Proxmox GUI. And there can be conflicts, that GUI magically reconfigures something for you that you configured statically in the files, etc. It's also a little bit painful with automation. So, like for us, every single Linux machine is managed by Puppet, and it's completely automated. Well, it's just about impossible to manage a Proxmox host with Puppet, because if you click things in the GUI, it will completely change your config files in a way that you can predict, and Puppet would be very angry about it, which is actually one major contention that I don't like about Proxmox. if I wanted to manage a Proxmox host by Puppet, I would have to learn every single little intricacy of how the GUI does it inside of the config files, and watch the version changes and everything else. So it's very different systems. Each has pros and cons. Hyper-V being Microsoft, I could talk for I could make a rant out of all the issues that we ran into managing that Hyper-V cluster, and it's all just down to Microsoft. And so they are. What I'm trying to say is they are different systems, and each has cons and pros, right? Either being in the knowledge requirement or the price category, or being Microsoft category, and also each has a different feature set. For example, Hyper-V has very different features than VMware, right? Mostly it lacks many of them, but a few of the Microsoft proprietary ones are there, where they are of course not in VMware. And Proxmox being again a fully Linux solution, there is a lot of technical, I don't want to say depth, there is a lot of technical know-how that you need to have if you were to operate this as a production-grade cluster. Now, what I think, if you are just spinning up a single VM host, honestly, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. For a single server, any of them will do a great work. What does matter is, as soon as you are trying to spin up a cluster and do redundancy and live motion of virtual machines and whatever else, that's a completely different ballgame. And especially running a production cluster, where when something breaks, you need to know how to fix it and not screw it up, which is a completely different game, right? If you are just going to run a single host, doesn't matter, pick one or pick all three, play with them, experiment, and pick whichever one you like best. You have most know-how in Microsoft, then spin up Hyper-V. You just want the easy button, pick ESXi. It will work wonderfully. It will be super easy to deploy, easy to use, easy to configure. You want a free, well, technically all of them are free for a single server, right? So technically, it's not as simple with Hyper-V, but ESXi is completely free for a single server, and Proxmox is of course Linux-based. And play with it, or just pick whatever you are most comfortable with. And if you are going to run a production-grade cluster, make sure you know what it takes, and make sure you actually understand the technology and don't screw yourself over when it breaks and you don't know how to fix it, or you accidentally wipe production data or something like that. Those things are not fun.
For sure.
Yeah, because it's pretty straightforward to set up like a 3-node Proxmox cluster. They even have guides for it to get Ceph and everything running. But because when I was setting up, I set one up in all virtualized. I couldn't run anything production on it because I didn't have hardware to test with. But once you get distributed storage in place, it's kind of magical the first time you can yank power to a server and the VM boots up automatically on another host, because the data is getting written across all the hosts. So the other nodes have access to that virtual machine's information, and it just powers it up. There's no like migration or image you have to move over or copy over. So it's pretty awesome.
When we tested it, it was live. We set up Proxmox with high availability. Remember that? And then we killed one server, and it was just continually running on the other servers. Pretty cool.
Yeah, it's awesome, but then as soon as you get into the territory where you have to scale it out and you have to deal with Ceph, because for the most part you turn on Ceph in the command line, and then each node has a GUI interface to kind of mess with Ceph. But if you look at the Ceph documentation, it's one of the most complicated pieces of software I've ever looked at. It's multi-layered. Every single piece of the layer has API access that you can hook into different actions in the software, and there's just so much complexity that if it goes wrong, it's going to be very difficult to troubleshoot, which is why the VMware option is so expensive. If it can just do all that for you, and if you have the approved hardware, it's ready to go.
You could still do high availability with Proxmox. You don't need to use Ceph. You could use central storage. And of course, then you have the thing of
you have to scale out the storage too.
Yeah, exactly.
But if it's mission critical software, especially if it's something financial or anything important where even if it's down for a couple seconds and
Yeah.
you miss transactions, it's a huge problem. So
Sure.
It's not just that, but for example, so with storage or with any clustering, there is a concept called quorum, right? Or I think that's how
Yeah.
it's pronounced, or quora, or a quorum, right? And
Yeah.
the worst possible case is, let's just say you have a simple 3-node cluster, and let's say you lose quorum. So all of the nodes get disconnected from each other. So a quorum basically is a majority. If somebody makes a decision, that decision is made on a majority and it's valid against a decision that's made by a minority. So an example is you have a 3-node cluster and one node gets disconnected, and well, 2 nodes are more than one, so they still have quorum and they still have decision power, right? But let's say you have a full quorum split, so each server gets disconnected from each other, right?
Wow.
So who now? There is no quorum. Each server is independent. So what? How do you deal with data being written on the distributed storage at the same time when there is no quorum, and like split cluster conditions are like these are a complete nightmare, and you think this is never going to happen. Oh, you just wait. Power died on your rack or something.
yeah,
And you have a broken quorum, you have broken storage propagation, you have broken everything, and you don't know how to fix it. And if this is just a company that's like 10 employees and it's down for a day, then this is major outage and major money that you're talking about. Like running clusters in production is not trivial.
Yep.
So do your homework,
Heard that.
play with some stuff.
see what you like.
Yeah.
And break it. Actually, break it and learn how to fix it when it breaks. Be prepared, for the eventuality of it breaking in production. And you should not be studying when something breaks in production and testing and trying and experimenting with things. No, that's a bad idea and leads to massive loss, either in money or time or data. So if you do something, break it in your lab. See how many ways you can make it go wrong and find ways to fix it, and you will learn the technology like that, and you will be ready for the eventuality of it dying in production.
I prefer to hire
Kernak,
a Thomas or a Nick so they don't have to figure out all the ways
Yeah,
to
we
break
gotta.
I'm not quite at Thomas, but
We have to clone Kernak so I could beat him. I'm just kidding. So I could love him.
What?
I'm not sure if either of those is something I would want, but okay.
Yeah, I've captured some of his DNA for later reproduction, so don't worry. It's good. It's good. When that technology exists, we'll be good. Don't worry about it, Dave. I got you, boy. All right.
So there is a lock of my hair somewhere in your
Yeah, we
pocket.
have to change the
That what you're
DNA to
saying?
make his hair straight.
I got some of his toenails. It's great. Let's see. Something I ran into the other day, which I just thought was interesting, and I was curious. You guys always go silent when I ask these types of questions, so I'm just curious to see what you'll say. But have you guys heard of the website Cameo? I linked it earlier. It's
I was just looking at that.
in effect, it's an app where you go in and you find some celebrity that you like. You give them kind of a foundation of a message you want them to say, and then pay them somewhere between, I saw $15 to $500, and they'll give you like a 30-second message, like a video message or whatever. I just thought it was so weird. What's your take on that?
I want to do it for Pennytone. I want to get I saw what's his name? Ron Jeremy is in there.
Oh my god.
Nah, I wouldn't use him. But I was looking at it. It's pretty cool. I mean, they don't have any big
They have
celebrities,
Snoop
but
Dogg.
they do have
They
Snoop Dogg.
Brett
Yeah.
Favre on there. I mean, there's.
Oh, screw
Danny
him.
DeVito, or it doesn't matter.
I just thought it was.
They got Charlie Sheen.
Yeah.
I want him to say winning.
They've
I'd
got
pay him to
Andy
say
Dick
winning.
on there too. I saw him.
I think he's getting that request in
Oh,
every request.
You gotta bet Andy Dick. He's done way too much coke.
You can never do too much coke. He's still alive. There's more coke to do yet.
Yeah.
I just thought it was really weird because it's kind of it blurs a lot of lines. If you think about it.
Why?
Why? Well, I mean, think about it. Before, all these celebrities were these people you would see on TV or movies or TMZ, right? They're just some person that you never get to interact with. I mean, they might as well be art on the wall. And now, all of a sudden, you can reach out and kind of puppet master them a little bit. I don't know.
But that's what they do anyway.
I know.
What do actors do? they're doing what they're told to get money.
Usually for a lot of money, not just like $100.
Okay, fine. 30 seconds, $500 for 30 seconds. That's good
pretty
fucking
baller.
pay.
Well, I mean, if you look at the average person, I think it's somewhere around $60 or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's not
I'm looking at
a lot. But I mean, it's it's a good chunk of change.
I'm looking at Tay Zonde. You know who he is?
Chocolate Rain, dude.
Chocolate Rain.
Yeah. Dr. Drew's on there.
That's
I saw
old
that
school.
too. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's sort of weird, and it feels, I don't know. It almost feels like it's cheapening the experience. Now all these celebrities are just cam girls that you can pay a few bucks for and interact with. It's just, it's.
You should sign up on
it's
it.
like
You
weird
should
to
sign
me.
up on it.
No, dude, no. You have to
I'd
actually
give
be
you like
famous
$5
to.
You're famous.
No, I'm not. You have to be real famous to get on there and do the things. I just thought, I don't know. It just seems so bizarre to me how in contact we are with the world. Just how the internet is like super connecting everyone together, so much so that you can kind of reach out to these people that seemed unattainable before. I mean, obviously you're not going to be able to get Beyonce to send you a message or whatever, but these people that would traditionally be unattainable for mere mortals, you can now reach out and then have them tell your grandma happy birthday if you want. It's just weird.
Bullshit. Everybody's got a price.
Well, absolutely. But there was never a conduit before to get to them.
That's why this site is pretty cool. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, a lot of the names here, I don't know who the hell they are, but whatever. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, I looked at that, and then I instantly went to Fiverr and found people who do impressions. And so usually you can get, for $10, you can get an impression of anybody you want, saying anything you want for as long as you want. So it's a lot cheaper than actually getting the legitimate celebrity on there. Plus, there's probably something in their terms of service that says you can't use it for like your
Commercial
podcast
purposes.
intro or something. Yeah, stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it'd be easier to get an impersonator, I think. I was listening to Dan Harmon one time talking about having celebrities on Rick and Morty, and he said he never gets the real celebrity. But he said he also never asks them to be on there. He just does an impersonation. He said if you actually ask them and they say no, and then you get an impersonator, that you can kind of run into some legal problems like that. But if you just...
Well, there's a difference between imitating someone and emulating someone.
Oh, for sure.
Big difference,
Well,
yes, there is.
But I mean, you can do the exact same thing, get an impersonator to do the thing. But if you ask the person first and they say no, then you can get into like legal trouble. Right?
If you say that you're Dan Harmon and then you start doing Rick, you're in trouble. If you say I'm Dave Atias and I'm gonna emulate Rick,
oh no,
that's a whole nother story.
Like he did Ice-T. He did like an Ice-T impression on Rick and Morty.
That's not hard.
But had he said that had he gone and asked Ice-T to do it, and he said no, then his legal department probably wouldn't have let him get an impersonator to do it.
Well, they still let out the episode with Ice-T. I thought it was brilliant.
No, because it was just an impersonator, because he didn't bother asking him. That's what I'm saying. It's interesting. All right, one other thing. Dungeons and Dragons is really hard. I'm getting ready to play for the first time.
Skip that.
It's really hard.
Skip that.
It's really hard.
Dude, you have to like act and shit.
No,
Skip that.
Dude, I
stuff.
haven't even got... So we got online, and it took us literally an hour for me to create my character. We're using this thing called Fantasy Grounds. It's this really horribly written app, I think in Lua or something like that. I mean, I can see where they're going with it. It's just, it needs to be like wizard based, not like Dungeons and Dragons wizard, but like a click, next wizard sort of thing to fill it out. Because it's like, we had to go this place, and then you have to like drag this thing over, and then you got to go over here, and then over there, and then you click this thing, and then within this thing, there's another thing you click, and then it's just insanity. To set up these characters. Apparently once you get going, it's fun, and this application makes a lot of sense and helps things, but man, it's a lot of work. I kind of just thought I would be rolling up and like 5 minutes later everything would be done, but it is absolutely not the case.
No.
And I don't understand anything that's in there. There's like dexterity, and they're like, that determines how likely you are to get hit and stuff, and I'm like, all right, so what do you do with the things?
Dude,
man, it's tough. I haven't even
I've
started.
got a lot of friends that play. I have a lot of friends that play, but I'm the type of person that if I'm going to do something, I really want to understand how it works. And things like D&D, and there's like Pathfinder and a whole bunch of other branch type games like this, you really have to know all the rules and like what exists in this like structure, classes and stats. Like you're supposed to build characters a certain way, and it was just like my friends kept wanting me to play it, but after they were explaining like how much stuff you kind of have to know as a prerequisite to kind of get far through the game, I was like, I don't have time for
I'm
this.
not about that life.
It seemed interesting, but
So
I don't know.
the guy I'm going to play
If you have a
with,
good DM,
go ahead.
it helps a lot.
Mm.
If you have a good DM, it helps a lot. He can guide you and he can help it. But if you're like picking it up and like as a group and nobody has ever dealt with D&D before, then that's horrible.
Yeah, I'm the only new one in this group, and
I'll be fine.
yeah, I figured the guy that's that organizes it, he's actually written. So there's like some LARPs here. I can't remember what it's called, but he actually like wrote storyline and stuff like that for like National or whatever. So he's like good at that thing. And he is one of the funniest dudes I've ever met. And so when he and I get together, we just say the worst things imaginable, and it's just gonna be.
I'd love to know
it's
about
just gonna
that.
be like a handful of people that are just complete jackasses, and apparently. When they DM, they like super roll with the punches, and it's okay to say the most ridiculous things I can think of. So I'm really looking forward to that aspect. It sounds like it's going to be just very comedic the entire time. So I'm looking forward to that. Because I listened to a little bit of like Dan Harmon's D&D stuff, and that was a lot of fun. So I'm hoping it ends up being like that. I was just curious if you guys have any tips or tricks associated with that, because I super have no idea. I figured I'd go on YouTube and like watch some videos on Fantasy Grounds, because that application is just breaking my brain. I don't know how to use it.
What is it called? Fantasy Grounds? Never heard of it. Nor do I ever play video games.
I don't either. This is a board
So I don't
game.
know.
It's just like an online application, so that people kind of in disparate locations can play D&D all together, sort of thing.
Dave, you will have a mob going after you now for not knowing what D&D is, and it's the same.
What do you mean? I know what Dungeons and Dragons is. I used to play when I was a kid. It was awful. I got more into Magic. I got really into Magic for a little while. That was a cool game, but whatever. I don't have time for that shit.
Yeah, you do. You choose not to have time. You know what you need to do is play pickleball. Get you into that.
I want to play pickleball with you.
You need to play.
Should I bring
play
pickles?
pickleball with yourself.
Oh yeah, I do that every night.
Okay. Well, look up. There's probably people around you. LA's a wild town. I'm sure there's plenty of it there.
Yeah. Pickleball. Do I have to bring a pickle? Doesn't it involve a pickle?
It can be involved, I guess, if you want, but it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
All right. I'm done talking. Are you guys done talking?
I'm gonna pass out. Kernak just made my head want to explode.
I don't know.
Too much info.
You're
Input.
welcome.
Need input.
That's why I wear earbuds, so my brains don't leak out when he's talking.
Nice.
All right. Dave, if people are going to get a hold of you out on the internet, how are they going to go about that?
Just one quick thing. Lisa Loeb, it can be hired for $75.
I mean, Lisa Loeb, you mean?
Yeah, she was the one that sings "I'm all out of faith." No, she was
That wasn't her, was it?
What was the other one?
Was it Stay?
That was
You only hear
Stay,
what you
yeah.
want to.
You say
Yeah.
I only hear what I want to.
Right.
Okay. Anyway, if you want to get in touch with me,
That was
you can. You
And,
can do
and
it.
this
through-
is where the Patreon money goes to.
It's real easy to get in touch with me. You could do it through the Slack channel, or just email me, david@pennytone.com, or you can go to pennytone.com and sign up for service and send me a whole bunch of money.
Oh,
That's the best way.
solid. All right, Nick, if people want to get a hold of you out on the internet, how would they do that?
You can email me at nick@arellano.io, and also join the Patreon and get on the Slack group. I'm there pretty constantly.
Yeah. We really got to get you a stage name. Your last name's too hard to spell, Nick.
I know. I don't think it's really that bad. I've heard way more complicated names, but people always mess it up.
Nick is Spock.
I just
Thomas is Dexter's Lab. I gotta figure you out though. I'm coming for you.
yeah. Good luck.
We got to get a good name for Dave.
We've got plenty of names. They're just not socially acceptable.
They used to call me Dirty Dave in college. I don't know
I
why.
wonder why.
No, I did not touch any girls that were filthy. Anyway,
Could have been just your lack of overall
Mouth.
hygiene. Thomas, how do people get a hold of you out on the internet?
Yeah, I'm easy to find. Just Google for me, Thomas Kernek. Of course, there's also Slack, and then there's unimus.net. So yeah, you just go there. We have live chat and ask for me, and yeah, anything. I have YouTube, Facebook, all the social networks. If you want to find me, you'll find me.
That's right.
you're not showing off at
Thomas all day, every day. If you want to get a hold of me, I'm Greg at gregsoul.com. Also, I am pretty responsive on the Slack. The weekends, I kind of slack off a bit. You like what I did there? No, man. I try, be like present with my family and all that stuff. But if you DM me, though, I usually am very responsive on that stuff. I guess if you have any questions or comments, please send them to contact us at TheBrothersWISP.com or just, shoot them over to me, Facebook.com/TheBrothersWISP. All of that good information is Mike Hammett. Love him or hate him, he's always putting stuff up. So thank you, Mike.
I mean, he's always asking stuff.
Hey, man. He's a curious guy. I'm a curious guy, too. Let's be curious next to each other. So, join us in the Slack, patreon.com/TheBrothersWISP. We are always happy to have new people, whether you are an experienced veteran or you're brand new to the game. Jump there. We even have people that don't even really do networking. We've got like server guys and stuff in there, which kind of breaks my brain. But I really love it because they are very adept. So I was talking about how I'm going to have to do a project where I'm reading tail numbers on planes, and Colin.
That sounded cool.
Yeah, and Colin was just like, "Oh yeah, you do the blah 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 blah." And I was like, Jesus, man, is there nothing these people don't do? Like, these guys do everything. There is somebody in there that does a thing, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can ask them. It's so awesome. I love it.
So yeah, become a patron.
Yeah.
It's so worth it.
Patreon.com/TheBrothersWISP. All right.
Off the project.
That's the last time
talk
I'm
with
gonna
these cool guys.
prostitute myself on this show ever. That's it. Never gonna mention it again. All right, thank you guys. We'll catch you all next time.
Oh, I was so waiting for a Mikro there.
So people can start searching.
Bye, guys.
Neighborhoods, net surfing. We got horrible jokes. We're loud and annoying, but we're informative facts. We're not disappointing. Just give us a listen, cause fun is the mission. I'm telling you, you don't know what you are missing. Ideas and some good comedy given. If you missed the show already, don't worry, you're forgiven.